Well, millions of Americans start their day with a cup of coffee. For others, it's an afternoon pick-me-up. But how much caffeine is too much caffeine? And how do you maximize the benefits and avoid the harms? Well, I hit the town to grind out the do's and don'ts of a cup of joe. At Dessert Oasis Coffee Roasters in Ferndale, caffeine is king. Customer Izzy Kwan says her 1 to 2 cups of coffee each day gives her the boost she needs.
Sometimes, like if I get a good 8 hours, I can cruise through the day, but other times that cup of coffee really just jumpstarts my morning.
And Izzy isn't alone.
The ritual of having a coffee in the morning or at whatever time of day it is, there's something really kind of special about that.
Nathan Hamoud is president and director of coffee for Dessert Oasis. He took us behind the counter to show us the operation, from the raw beans from Brazil and Burundi to beans being weighed, then roasted and cooled. Nathan says if you're looking for a caffeine kick, craft coffees give you a bigger boost.
We tend to brew slightly stronger coffee, slightly higher, coffee to water ratios.
But you have to be careful.
Detroit Medical Center dietitian Marilyn Anderson says government guidelines suggest a maximum daily caffeine intake of 400 milligrams.
4 cups of coffee, 8-ounce, 8-ounce cups. But people now drink the 16 ounces.
Caffeine kicks in as little as 5 to 15 minutes, peaks in about an hour, but the effects can last a good chunk of the day. Caffeine has a half-life of 5 hours, so half of that 10 a.m. cup of joe is still in your system at 2 p.m., and 25% is still hanging on after dinner. Too much caffeine can lead to tremors, headache, insomnia, heart palpitations, elevated blood pressure, anxiety, and irritability. The USDA hasn't weighed in on kids and caffeine, but the American Academy of Pediatrics discourages caffeine consumption for kids and adolescents.
So it's at the discretion of parents.
But parents should know it's not just coffee in the spotlight. Panera's Charged Lemonade has been in the headlines with lawsuits alleging 2 deaths and permanent heart damage. Other sources of caffeine include chocolate. The cocoa bean is related to the coffee bean, and generally, the darker the chocolate, the higher the caffeine. Black teas, kombucha, pop, even over-the-counter pain relievers can have as much as 100 milligrams of caffeine in a standard 2-tablet dose. Back at Dessert Oasis Coffee Roasters, where the focus is on getting the brew just right, if you're trying to cut your caffeine, go for the darker roast.
Lighter roasts tend to technically have a little bit more caffeine than darker roasts. In theory, as you roast coffee more, you burn off a little bit more of the caffeine content.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that, hey, I got the darker roast, I'm getting more caffeine. It's the lighter roasts that have that extra boost. Now, there are some people who should be more careful with their coffee consumption. That includes people with high blood pressure, cardiac disease, or diabetes. Even migraine sufferers may want to limit their caffeine intake to about 100 milligrams a day to avoid setting off a migraine. That 100 milligrams is about a good old cup of coffee.
There you go. Or you can have a thermos.
Yeah, I go big and I have a couple of these, but it's a long day and it starts early.
You know what I've been doing lately is actually drinking electrolyte water before I drink any type of caffeine, because you'd be surprised just as much as hydrating in the morning can wake you up.
All right,
So,
great advice.
Such good advice. Yes.